Hey, welcome back to the channel. I'm Blake Green. I'm a cloud architect and AWS community builder. Today, I'm going to walk through a modern SSH with Leapp and SSM and AWS SSM. You can follow me on Twitter at BlakeGreenDev, or my website is blakegreen.dev. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump in and check out how to SSH in a modern way with Leapp and SSM. So first of all, what is Leapp? Leapp is a new sort of dev tool that allows you to securely access your AWS accounts and environments. So here's their website at leap.cloud. They provide documentation that kind of shows off what they're made of here, and it says, improve workflows for cloud developers, which I totally agree with. And I've been using this in production with all of our accounts, especially as multi-account strategies become best practice and are sort of taking over, and you have to switch between different accounts and environments sort of quickly. A tool like this just kind of streamlines that process so that you can jump around and not really have to worry about setting environment variables and profiles and all that. It just kind of works and is super secure. It also works with Azure as well if you're into that kind of thing. But so far I've been really happy with this product, and it's really leveled up my productivity quite a bit. From their documentation, they provide some getting started information as far as installing and some of the concepts. But what I wanted to touch on was like the security. And I think the first time I saw this, it's kind of curious to see how they handled the credentials that you use to access your environment. And I was sort of, happy to see that, it's built into the product or the service, right? Where security first, the security first approach, and that they leverage, zero knowledge to provide end-to-end encryption, which is really awesome. And then under the hood, they're kind of, just sort of like an abstraction on top of what you would use through like AWS SSO, right? Where if you go to the portal and use command line or programmatic access, it spits out temporary credentials that you can just set in your terminal and sort of go from there. But this just kind of automates a lot of that process for you, which is just super nice. And we'll go through that in a minute here. As far as configuration is concerned, they have different ways that you can authenticate into your account or environment. I definitely recommend, if you are already using, AWS SSO, I think this is probably the de facto way of accessing, multiple AWS accounts. And they make it super easy to, set up your identity provider through Leapp. So it's just, the portal URL, select your region, give it an alias, and you're kind of off and running. And then as soon as you select which account you want to access, you kind of go through your normal normal authentication workflow, right? Username, password, multi-factor authentication, and then you're in, right? It just kind of sets your profile for you, and you're off and running. You can kind of use your normal CLI commands that you're used to, and go from there. But in terms of what we're focusing on today, right, a modern SSH access, we can sort of use some of their built-in features, right? So where Leapp can, once you've gone through your normal authentication workflow, you can use built-in features such as the SSM session, so that if there's EC2 instances in that account that you're trying to access that have the SSM agent and the role assigned to it, you would just be able to drop into that EC2 instance right through your terminal. So how is that different, right? Like, why is that a more modern way of accessing your EC2 instances? And so from the AWS documentation, they sort of provide you with information on how to connect to your Linux instances using SSH, right? And again, you sort of have to have an instance out there. It has to have a public IP address or DNS name, whatever. You have to have private and public keys that, if you're working in a large team, like, have who has access to those keys, and how do you rotate those, on a regular basis, hopefully. And then, things like having port 22 open, and then kind of maintaining that allow list, right? Like that, the sprawl of that can get pretty significant, especially as the industry has really moved towards this, remote first workforce, right? Where, people are working from home. So how do you allow, each and every, engineer that's working remotely into your EC2 instances if you need to. I know there's things like, Bastion hosts and stuff like that, which make it a little bit easier. But again, like from a security perspective, I think there's, that's more of like an older way to look at it. Whereas, leveraging the cloud platform's native tools, such as like SSM, I think you'll be able to see here like how nice it is to just streamline that whole process, and just kind of use that zero trust architecture where you're authenticating everywhere before you get into the network. So without further ado, if I come over to the well, yeah, let's take a look at the infrastructure that we deployed, right? So this is a cloud development kit or CDK application written in Python, and essentially it's just a simple stack. You can see here it just deploys a VPC. It deploys an IAM role, and then we add a managed policy, for that SSM managed instance core policy to the role, right? And then we assign that role into the instance that we deploy. And this instance is just a T3 micro running Amazon Linux 2 inside the VPC. So again, nothing too crazy, but what you'll notice here is like there's no key pair. I'm not creating a security group that allows port 22 from my workstation, right? And so if we come over to Leapp now, and you'll see here, I'm already authenticated to my account. Obviously, I didn't want to go through the whole username, password, multi-factor authentication, but this is set up to my identity provider. And if I click the drop down here, you'll see there's the SSM session, right? And if I click on this, it'll make me select a region. My CDK application is deployed in US East 1, North Virginia. So if I find that region here in the drop down, and it goes out, looks for it, and there's my instance, right? Here's my Leapp stack instance. There's the last octet there is 112, right? So if I come back over here just to make sure, in the AWS console, here's I don't think that's been updated. Sorry. Oh yeah, I had to terminate one, but Okay, so here's that same IP address, right? So again, you'll see this running instance. It doesn't have a public IP address. Um, the security group here, like there's no inbound rules, and yet if I come back over here to use and hit this button that says connect, you'll see it automatically opens up my terminal, and now I'm on this instance, right? So under the hood, right, it's using this AWS SSM, right, or the AWS CLI command, but I don't have to know, or I don't have to like go and look up that instance ID or anything like that. You can see here it's using my authentication to access that instance. And then if I do an let me bump up the font here. If I do an if config, you'll see like that I'm on that instance here, right? That 112 instance. So really cool, right? Now I can kind of do whatever I need to, but from a security perspective, or even as like an cloud engineer, right? I don't have to worry about the allow list or security group inbound rules. I didn't have to worry about setting my SSH key pair, stuff like that. I just kind of authenticate, select my region, select the instance that I want to connect to, and then it drops me into a terminal session on my workstation here. So that is what I would consider a modern way of SSHing into your EC2 instances, using Leapp to authenticate, and then using SSM as the sort of mechanism to access the actual instance. So hope you enjoyed this video. I'm going to kind of keep doing more of these reviews of dev tools and how it can increase developer productivity. And I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.